Hello, guys. I would say hola if I were in Barcelona, but since it's online today, it will be full in English. I am Renan Correa. I am a consultant in Germany. I am originally from Brazil, and since globalization is here, I am doing a presentation for Barcelona remotely. And one of the topics I will talk about is really global. It is tax and compliance. That is currently a big deal that is only going to increase in the next years. And I will be talking about the newest SAP solution for compliance. It is called SAP Document and Reporting Compliance, and it was made available in S4HANA 2021 for the first time. I will go into more details about it during the presentation, but the solution is new, but the problem is not that new. The problem is very old, and we'll talk about it in details. I would like first to thank the organizers for doing such an amazing work and scheduling everything and organizing everything for us to be able to just come and deliver the presentation. Thank you, guys. And now, talking about the agenda for today, I will start talking about e-documents, e-reports, and what we call e-compliance. And I'll be talking about what is the current trend we see in this area and why we need even more solutions, even better solutions for the future, and why SAP is doing things in this direction. And then I will talk a bit about what is the scope and what is included in this S4HANA solution called SAP Document and Reporting Compliance. I will show a quick demo in the real system in one S4HANA 2021. I will show you the e-document and the e-reporting functionalities and talk a bit about it. And in the end, I'll just summarize our conversation and I'll show you where you can get additional sources of information. That is also very important. If you're a consultant, you have to follow the right channels and stay tuned with the innovations from SAP because things are changing really fast. So when we start to think about compliance, we have to think what is the main driver of compliance? And that is definitely tax evasion. That's where the governments are really looking forward to have more tools and more controls to avoid tax evasion. And that is something that really increased a lot in the last years. Not the tax evasion, but the controls over taxes. The governments in the world, they are introducing different kind of regulations to show electronic reports like account statements, profit statements, but also to the transaction level, they are increasing the controls. So the governments are even more creating ways for companies to show their invoices electronically, to show their deliveries electronically, and also to confirm when they receive payments from customers and so on. So these controls to avoid tax evasion, they are just growing. They started, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago with some already uh, paper reports, and they are now evolving to different kind of regulations from the government. And that is not only to avoid tax evasion, but also to increase the efficiency of the government agencies. That is another reason why they are evolving so fast. As companies need to digitize things and to improve efficiency to do more with the same resources or even less resources, the governments, they still have the same challenges. They also have to improve their efficiency, to collect revenue faster, to be able to find companies faster and to identify problems in a faster way. And that is another reason why we are seeing so much things in the area of digital compliance. These trends, they are not coming back. So will have every year even more regulations and more digital compliance requirements from the companies. And that is the context that we are right now. That's where our companies have to deal. So if you are doing an S4HANA rollout to different countries, let's say you are a global company, you have operations in all continents. Every time you're going to install S4HANA for a certain country, you'll have to deal with all the tax calculation for the transactional processing, but you also have to deal with all the legal requirements in terms of electronic reporting and documents. And that is where SAP has this new solution for S4HANA 2021. So when we discuss processes and digital compliance, one of the main things we see is that we have two parts in the equation. We have the company internal processes, how I create my billing documents, how I create my accounting processes, and how they are perceived by the government agencies through electronic documents and electronic reports. So, in that case, we have two main scenarios for compliance. We have what we are required to do in real time. For example, in Brazil, companies they have to send electronic invoices for every transaction with goods. So every time goods are going to leave the warehouse and they are going to be sent to the customer, the government has to know the invoice details, amounts, and taxes before the goods are actually delivered to a customer. That's a very good example of real time reporting from transactional details. But on the other hand, we also have what's called a periodic reporting. So every month, the government wants also to know in the same case what were the totals of every invoice sent, what were the totals of taxes due to the government, and the details of every transaction that was already reported in real time. So the government is also validating the totals against the process to try to find discrepancies or find missing taxes somewhere. And this is exactly what SAP document and reporting compliance helps the companies with. So SAP document and reporting compliance helps company to generate these electronic documents in real time and also to do the legal reporting in the end of the period. So when you do month end closing, you appraise your taxes. That's also the moment when you generate legal reports for the government. And that is exactly what I'm going to show in the system later on, both how to and where these electronic documents are created, and also where they get reported at period end. One thing that I started to mention is that governments that they have been evolving. They were used to paper forms in the past, so companies had and still have in some countries to fill different paper forms to deliver their tax returns and to calculate their taxes to be paid. But that is a trend that already evolved. In some other countries, for example, companies are delivering text files or filling online forms. In Latin America, the e-invoice is basically the standard today. Almost all countries in Latin America work with e-invoice. That is a trend that is getting some traction also in Europe. Many countries are implementing electronic invoice, even in Germany, which is famous for having um, mail and paper forms. We are starting to see electronic invoices. Some other countries they are in a different stage where they already have electronic accounting. The balance and the profits of the companies are reported in a structured format for the governments, and we are evolving in some concepts where it's not only the e-invoice and the e-accounting, but we have all kinds of processes electronically. We have to inform the payments we received for customers, like companies do in Mexico. You have to inform the deliveries that leave the warehouse and are not even sales. It's just if you are transferring goods from one warehouse to another one. And that's what we say that the governments they started with e-invoice, went for e-accounting, e-audit, and now they want everything from the companies. Everything has to be digital and to be included in some kind of report that is auditable for the government online so that you can be fined if you don't do something right online. No need for an auditor to go into the company to verify papers or documents. It can be done remotely using different kinds of technologies. Even some governments are applying machine learning and artificial intelligence to automatically recognize tax discrepancies and tax evasion. So that is the context in the world right now. We have different stages for this electronic compliance in different countries. If we have a look at some examples here, we see why we need to have a strong system of record to be able to deal with all these requirements. For example, we start with e-file here on the left hand side. We have periodic obligations like the Make Tax Digital in UK. So the companies they are obliged to send this data periodically to government. If you are a global company, you have this requirement UK. But if you also have a company code in Spain, you have a different requirement with different processes behind it that generate some kind of legal reporting at document level to the government. In a traditional ECC system, these processes were all done in different transactions. So if I do a rollout from my company in Germany to UK, I have to understand these requirements, map the transactions, put it in my template. I have to find the roles for authorization for end users and also understand this different process. When I go to Spain, I have the same work. I have to rework part of my template to generate this electronic document to map these different transactions and different processes. And the same thing happens if I go to Chile or Mexico, but they have even more documents and more scenarios that have to be reported. So that was a big challenge and still is in the ECC world because for electronic documents and electronic reports, we have different transactions to generate the files and the reports for the government. So it always adds more work for the global IT to do the localization of the template for a specific rollout in a specific country. And that is one of the problems SAP wants to tackle with SAP document and reporting compliance. Now we want or we have an uniform approach in S4HANA. That means that with central cockpits and central Fiori apps, we can do the generation of legal reports and legal documents for different governments using the same interfaces and having more uniformed approach. That is a very big deal for global IT when you have an installation where global IT is responsible for 20 or 30 countries. Having a different transaction and a different process in every subsidiary puts a lot of pressure for maintenance and for IT to understand and help the end users and key users during their work. So that's really the idea to have an uniform approach using SAP document and reporting compliance. We have a central cockpit called the document cockpit. I'll show you in a moment where the users can create electronic documents, no matter what is the source document, be it an accounting document, a delivery, a billing, and document from a different module like ISU for utilities. So all these different sources of data can generate an electronic document in the same cockpit. That brings a lot of benefit for standardization of processes, for mapping of user roles, and also for the end users who ultimately have to use this transaction to issue documents and to monitor their status. So that's one part of the solution. Then we have periodic report. In the past, it was basically hundreds of different transactions in ERP. Every country had its own different report. Now with document and reporting compliance transactions, we have one central app. No matter the country where you are going to generate the report, it will start in this central app called Run Compliance Reports. And from that, you have the sequence of steps to be executed and also the mapping of the data. And also, you can submit it to legal and to government entities from your legal entity. That's a big benefit also for the companies on the compliance side during month end closing. They can see the status of their legal reports, if they are delivered or not, and if they were already submitted or not for the government, for example. And that also brings to the system processes. That is a big change. Usually, when we had previous ECC processes and reports, lots of activities were done outside the system. For example, the users generated the legal report file, but it was not stored in SAP. It was stored in the network folder in the company. So if somebody had to find it, couldn't find it from the system, had to access the company network to look for the file. Another example, if you want to see the status of a certain legal report, you had to access either the government web portal or you had to look for the accountant responsible for that subsidiary and ask him if the report was delivered or not. That information was not in a process inside the system. And now with this document and reporting compliance, we do have the overview status in the system that makes it easier for global compliance managers and tax managers to follow the activities that were executed in different subsidiaries and track what's going on in each subsidiary. We also have support from SAP and from the solution to generate any legal form that is needed or just any PDF form that is needed as an output for your customer or vendor, depending on the situation, and to submit everything electronically to the government where it is electronic submission allowed. That is a important distinction. The solution, it works to generate the files, and if the government also works with web services and web communication, you can already submit it from the system and get instant feedback from the government if the file is delivered, if it is approved. So that is also a very good topic for the tax team. And that is what SAP now calls this uniform approach with SAP document and reporting compliance. One thing I have to mention about it is that it is available as of S/4HANA 2021, the solution called SAP Document and Reporting Compliance. But if you are on older SAP S/4HANA versions, you can also use it, but it had a different name. In the past, it was basically two separate solutions. We had SAP Document Compliance on one end, for the electronic document generation, and we had SAP Advanced Compliance Reporting on the other hand for the reporting. So if you are in S/4HANA 1809, 1909, you already have the solution, but it has two different names and two different products, let's say. Now it was brought together in one single solution from now on, but it is also available in the older S/4HANA versions with a different naming. The main change from S/4HANA 2020 to 21 was the name, that is true, but SAP also already delivered an additional application where you can monitor the status of both things together. So SAP is working towards delivering more integrations for both scenarios, electronic and statutory reporting together, and that is the way forward. So from now on, we'll see these topics always walking hand in hand. And one of the reasons for that is that sometimes, or in the last years, the barriers are being crossed. For example, in the past, we had a clear distinction of what is an electronic report and what is an electronic document from a transactional point of view. But governments are requiring even more information and with faster deadlines. So these lines are getting blurred. What is exactly an electronic document? What is an e reporting? Because in the end, there are two forms of e compliance. So due to this trend in the government requirements, SAP also thought it would make sense to put these two solutions together under the same scope and create uniform approach, because in the end it's the tax department and the fiscal users who are going to take care of both requirements, and they are really the same team. That's something that is interesting for now on, that the approach is uniform and we'll see even more integrations between e-reporting and e-documents. I will go into the system right now and I'll show you the e-document cockpit. That is a transaction in S/4HANA where you can generate the electronic documents for every country. It doesn't matter what is the source document, it will be able here to generate the electronic document. Talking about a technical aspect, that is a very interesting solution. Why? In the past, we had different transactions, different monitors with different processing logics for every country. Now we have this uniform approach. We can reuse the same screen. We have uniform authorization objects. So for every country here with every process, I already have generated in the background authorization objects with the same objects, just different activities that is easier to map for end users. We have here as well uniform processing logics. For example, if you want to see what is the process for a certain object in the screen, I have a transaction called the process manager where I can see the classes and the methods behind every process. And if I want to maintain a custom process, I can reuse an SAP standard object and just replace it or enhance it with the different processing I need. Or I can simply copy SAP logic to create something new depending on my custom requirements. So this monitor offers a lot of flexibility. And SAP offers here different types of solutions. I will not go into details about licensing and the technical and the commercial aspects of these, but we have different options. So depending on the country you are implementing document compliance, you might have a full software as a service offering from SAP where they provide everything: the data extraction, the mapping in the inside BTP, and you also have the communication with government. For other countries, SAP offers basic and full scenarios where you have the option, for example, to buy a partner product for a certain country. So instead of buying the full software as a service solution from SAP, you can choose a certain partner from one country to do the implementation of the mapping and communication with a certain government. And that is also interesting because it allows you to use this e-document cockpit and SAP document compliance even in countries where SAP still did not deliver standard content. There are, for example, partners that delivered a solution for Uruguay, and Uruguay doesn't even have a country version from SAP, but there is an electronic document solution now because a partner developed using the framework and released it to the market. In Brazil, it's another example. There are solutions from partners for mapping different processes that were not part of the standard country version delivered by SAP. So this cockpit allows a lot of flexibility. It allows you to have different processes and different mappings depending on the country and the partner solution that you provide, that you implement, depending on the process that you are required in the certain country. That is a very interesting topic. And if I am having a look here at the last 30 days, but if I increase the amount of days, I see that there are even more countries, and that is one of the main advantages. Now everything is in one transaction. So if I want to see or I want to roll out an SAP document compliance solution to a certain country, everything will be in the same transaction. That is good from a global IT point of view, brings a lot of standardization and uniformization. Here I have what is called the electronic document. So I have different options already provided by SAP mapping. For example, if I click in the display, I can see the technical content of the message. This is an e-invoice for India, for example. That is the format. But in other countries, I have other formats. I have XMLs also for Italy, for Mexico. Every country has its own format, but the source data is extracted in, let's say, in standardized format, and the final mapping then requires some additional information from the country specific format. And for a consultant, what is important is to get to know what is the process manager for the SAP document compliance. The process manager is the transaction. It's basically a cluster view, and this cluster view is where you have all the settings for the processes involved and the steps to be executed in the process. So that is also something interesting for consultants, because if you want to develop a new process, you can come to the process manager and do some kind of reverse engineering from the SAP process, and you can derive how you can create a custom process out of that. That is very interesting. And you can also do some small changes and the configuration, and also adapt SAP processes for your system if needed. So here I have one example. I will get, for example, a Mexico scenario that is an interesting one. In Mexico, we have e-payment. That is, when you receive a payment from the customer, you have to inform the government the paid amount, and you have e-invoice, which is the basically when you sell something for a customer, you have to inform the invoice details for the customer. If I get this scenario, I can see in the process manager what are all the steps that are available to be executed in the transaction that is in the document cockpit, and I can see the technical details behind it. So I can see, for example, here the SAP class that is created and the method to process every step. That is something I find very interesting because in the past, as a consultant, I had to debug a program. And first times you are debugging a new process, you have to look for lots of coding. You have to try to reverse engineer how a certain thing is executed. And here we have already a structured way that helps you to understand where the processing happens and what is the method that is called. So even if you have an issue or a problem, it's much easier as a consultant to find where it is happening, where it's probably happening, and start from a certain point. And that is something that is implemented in all countries. So all countries basically have their own country class with the e-document structure, and there is a method to execute every action possible. So that's also something very modularized, and it's good if you want to make, for example, a new step. You can create a Z class and you create your Z method, but you follow the same structure, and then it looks like, or it feels like, works like the SAP transaction, even for a custom process. Okay, depends on your programming standards, it might not work so well, but if you follow good standards, then for sure it will work well, and it will not be a source of headache during the implementation. But not only the classes and methods are here, SAP also has here, for example, the processing logic, what step is allowed after every step, what is the result of processing a certain step. So this transaction is very interesting for the consultants because that's basically where they will work to create new processes or to understand how the SAP processes are created, and under one single cluster view. So everything is not a wizard, but it's something that feels like a wizard because you can create a new step, you configure it here, and then the next steps are just the next folders in the cluster view. That also helps a bit. It's not something that you need to look for different S-Pro paths and try to guess where you have to assign the next step. Here, it's all under one cluster view. That's a very good functionality. And just talking a bit about the technical background on the SAP document and compliance solution, it works with BTP for mapping of data, and it also works with AIF, Application Interface Programming Integration Framework, sorry. And that is the, let's say, main technical background for the SAP solution. That's how they do the data extraction and mapping inside S4HANA. And basically, as I can see here, Mexico e-invoice. If I open here, I have the steps and the classes. And if I go back to the cockpit and I open one e-invoice from Mexico, I can see these are the steps I see in the history of the document. And that's more or less how the solution is structured to work. And this is the electronic document processing inside document and reporting compliance. It's still a transaction. SAP is developing a Fiori app, but it's just, the status I have, last I saw in S1 2021, it's still not yet delivered. Probably it will come later. Electronic document. But I also talked about the statutory reporting part. And for that, we have another central cockpit in SAP. It is called, still called in S421, Advanced Compliance Reporting, but it's the let's say, statutory reporting part of the solution for document and reporting compliance. And here SAP did a very interesting thing. We basically have one app for the end user, and we have one app that is for consultants or IT experts. But every single report you need to generate in any country, you can start the process from the run compliance report. So it basically replaced hundreds of different transactions that existed in ECC with this single app. Inside the app, you have different steps, different processes for different countries, but the starting point and is the same, is centralized. When I go to the defined compliance report apps, then I have the same idea for IT. So every configuration or new report that you need to generate, or if you want to see how the reports are created, you can come to the defined compliance report. I will open it here and I'll show you some examples. I will open Germany. Uh,
Sorry, Renan, we are close to the. We need to finish soon.
okay.
Continue and try to finish.
Yes.
Okay. So
Uh,
basically, summarizing, the advanced compliance report has the definition for all the reports. Here you can see all the technical parameters that are available for a certain report, from the screen definition to the data that is being identified from the database using CDS views or HANA views or other transactions. And we have the output that is going to be generated. So it's an integrated solution. The run compliance reports is where you execute the reports, and it has a status view of everything that the company is running in terms of compliance reports and dates to be submitted. So it's a one integrated transaction for the whole company. And that was the demo for the reporting. I just wanted to highlight then additional sources of info SAP has. And book about the advanced compliance report. It's available in SAP Press. It was released this year. We do have communities in SAP Community Network, so you can go there. There is a community for the document compliance part and for the advanced compliance reporting part. You can join the community. There are many materials and discussions from SAP and from other experts. And that was my presentation. I'd like to thank you all for attending it. If you want to contact me, you can do it in LinkedIn or email.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Renan.
you.
Sure, we will.
thanks a lot, Renan.
Thank you.
¿Estás por aquí? Lo sé.